Welcome again to another edition of our podcast called Cases and Concepts. Tony Romanucci is going to talk about something that is on a lot of minds, and I think this is a nice opportunity to inform and set the record straight on a few things. We're talking about the financial cost of civil settlements, civil verdicts for police misconduct and wrongful convictions. Talk about what you saw in the Tribune, what we all saw in the Tribune, and where that logic goes wrong.
Well, thanks, Jen. And yes, this is an issue that's very close and dear to me because once again, Paul Vallas takes issue not so much with the root cause of why there are wrongful convictions or why there are so many wrongful police chases in the city of Chicago, but he's really victim blaming. And when you think about victim blaming in a wrongful conviction case specifically, by definition, something went wrong that convicted somebody, that caused somebody to spend very typically years, if not decades, in prison when they never should have been there. So I don't understand how you blame the victim and then want to shift the blame not from the city, but actually he wants to try and place what are called caps, monetary caps on the values on which these victims who have been wrongfully convicted can obtain. I mean, it's really a backwards system rather than try and say, City of Chicago, we are going to stop police officers from torturing people into confessions to a crime that they never committed. City of Chicago, we're going to make sure that our detectives don't coerce confessions out of witnesses to say something that they never saw just so that they can beef up their statistics for homicide closure rates. So we need to fix the root and not just basically throw out the baby with the bathwater because that's the solution here. And that is so backwards.
Well, let's talk about the relationship between symptom and disease, right?
Sure.
It seems as though the points, which we'll get into in a minute, are addressing the symptom, which is the financial pain, as opposed to the underlying root cause disease.
Yeah.
And you've seen this, and we've all seen this as a nation for decades. Sometimes financial pain is needed to bring change. Thoughts?
Well, I think Paul Vallas, once again, he has it wrong. I want to remind him that we live in the United States and that we have a Constitution and we have a Bill of Rights that have amendments to that Bill of Rights, and that one of those Bill of Rights is to have the right to trial by jury, and that is a civil jury. We're not talking about criminal. So when someone's been wrongfully convicted, they have the right to bring their case to a jury of their peers to determine whether or not their wrongful conviction was either right or wrong. And that's the system of checks and balances that we have. Furthermore, we also have the 14th Amendment, which preserves our right to due process. So you don't get tried by a police officer on the street. You don't get tried by a sergeant who is writing out or approving a form. No, you get tried by a judge and a jury. There are certain protections that we all have baked in to our Bill of Rights and the amendments that we must preserve, or else, what are we going to do? Are we going to now exercise people's rights through executive orders like what's happening in Washington right now? Are we going to just go the route of autocracy and tyranny? No, we must preserve our democracy first. That's why we have juries as checks and balances into as to what people bring as allegations in a lawsuit, which is another point that he makes. So we can talk about that too.
Let's go there. Let's talk about his claim that frivolous civil lawsuits should be pursued with additional litigation. And it operates on the premise that these wrongful conviction and police misconduct suits are frivolous.
Well, let's talk about frivolity in general, and then let's talk specifically. As an attorney who works to preserve clients' rights and whose business is basically its foundation are contingency fees. I have zero appetite or zero opportunity to bring a frivolous lawsuit. Because by doing that, I do nobody any justice. I don't do the client justice, and certainly I don't do any of our employees or even my firm any justice at all by bringing a frivolous lawsuit. So no, we don't bring frivolous lawsuits for a reason. We don't want them. So that's number one. Number two, Mr. Vallis, show me an example, give me an example of a frivolous lawsuit that you know of, and then let's see where the frivolity was. And secondly, we all want these lawsuits to proceed in a court of law if we can, because by doing that, we have that juror, we have the peer process to evaluate all of the evidence. It's not just one person.
Let's talk about caps. One of his suggestions was for Chicagoans or Illinoisans to lobby Congress for caps on police misconduct cases, similar to what has been done on some employment law cases. Now, the National Employment Lawyers Association has said this is not working well,
Yeah.
and I'd love to hear your thoughts on caps overall, but also on the comparison that police misconduct cases are similar to employment law.
Caps belong nowhere in our civilization. In our democratic society, based upon the values that we have and our Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury trial, caps belong nowhere in this process at all. What you're doing is actually by placing a cap on compensatory damages, what you're doing is enabling the wrongdoers to keep doing the wrong that they got them there in the first place because there's no financial incentive for them to stop doing it. And yes, it seems a little bass backwards, as they say, in order to um, um, have somebody pay in order to stop their behavior. But in these instances, money does money is the answer because that's our system of justice. If you do somebody wrong, if you commit a tort, our system says that you pay with monetary damages. And once there's enough monetary damages against a wrongdoer, they are going to change their behavior. And how do we know that? Well, we have many high level examples in this country, whether it's the Fort Pinto, whether it's asbestos litigation,
Big tobacco.
big tobacco is another one. Vaping is another one that's more recent in time. All the pharmaceutical cases, the roundups of the world, the 3M earplugs. You can go on and on and on. That there is a financial incentive for either people or corporations to stop doing wrong when there's money involved.
Another one of the proposals was on the creation of a special litigation division within city law. What are your thoughts on that, in particular on his suggestion for additional outside counsel and cost?
Well, first of all, he should evaluate how much money is being spent hiring this outside counsel. There's a lot of money being spent. And I'm not saying that you spend that money on victims who've been wrongfully convicted. Just put that money into the law department itself. Have them be City of Chicago employees. So if he wants a special litigation division within the City of Chicago, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with them, having a higher level of approval, so to speak, or oversight over their own litigation department. So if you have a litigation department overseeing another litigation department, that's what he wants, that's fine. But then don't hire so much outside counsel.
Let's end this conversation getting your thoughts on where the time, the energy, the money should be put instead of trying to limit civil litigation.
Well, first of all, we always want to start with training. Train and then train and then train again and then train every 6 months and every 6 months after that. Train, train, train. Secondly, I think Chicago police officers need to hear from attorneys who actually are involved in the process. And as you know, Jen, I've been invited out to speak and actually train police officers, hundreds at a time, for the last several years. And that's been very effective because they actually hear from the voice of the person who might be taking their deposition one day as to what gets them in a room with an attorney that they don't want to be in front of. So, besides training, you really have to also have a commitment to changing the culture because by changing the culture, you're not going to have, for example, police officers who think it's okay to commit a misdeed while they're on the street because then of fear of either getting caught or of getting sued. Just when you look at something as basic as a stop and frisk, you need to have reasonable articulable suspicion to make that stop. You can't stop and then ask the question. You have to understand why you're making the stop and then you can stop. You can't do it in the reverse order. So it takes a change of mindset, of culture, and obviously what we call white shirts who are dedicated to making sure that that happens.